Hi guys, today we're going to look at how we can take the most effective techniques from Taekwondo and apply them to an MMA or kickboxing scenario. This video is going to focus specifically on the back kick. There's many different ways that you can throw the back kick, but I'm going to give you my take on it coming from a Taekwondo background. During this video I'm going to break it down into 5 different parts. I'm going to start off by focusing on how we're going to stand to throw the kick, then we'll learn how to throw the side kick, and then using the technique for the side kick we'll learn how to throw the back kick. And then finally we'll look at setups you can use for the back kick in your sparring, and then the last thing we'll look at is a follow-up on what to do if the kick misses. So we're going to focus on 2 stances in this video. If you look at fighters that come from a karate or taekwondo background, they tend to stand with quite a bladed stance. This is where their feet are going to be in one line and their feet are also angled towards their opponent. This is in contrast to the more commonly seen squared stance, where the feet are slightly wider apart with the feet pointing towards the opponent. Some of the advantages of the bladed stance is it allows you to move very quickly in straight lines. This is due to being able to push off with both feet and cover distance very quickly. Sometimes commonly referred to as the blitz in karate. The bladed stance also gives you access to the side kick and the back kick. You can see here that I'm throwing the side kick with the lead leg straight from the bladed stance. Now throwing the back kick, which is the focus of this video, from the bladed stance, this time with the rear leg. The reason the bladed stance is so effective for throwing the back kick is the position of the hips. You can see here that in order to get into the right position to throw the back kick, I simply need to turn my heel towards my opponent. This is in contrast to the more square stance, where your foot has to travel a much greater distance in order to get into the correct position to throw the kick. It's for this reason that I prefer to stand with a bladed stance whenever I'm throwing the back kick, as it gives my opponent less time to react and there's a higher chance the kick is going to land. It is important to consider some of the downsides of the bladed stance. The main disadvantage is that you're very susceptible to leg kicks. You can see here that as the leg kick comes in, if I'm standing in my bladed stance, my knee is going to get turned in the way. This can leave me off balance and does not give me any opportunity to counter. It's for this reason that I would recommend standing with a more square stance and then look to enter into the bladed stance whenever you're deciding to throw the kick. You can see here that square stance gives me the opportunity to brace the leg kick as it's coming in, so you're not taking the kick fully into your thigh. This bracing of the leg kick also ties into a counter, which I was taught by Dean Riley and I found to be very effective in my own sparring. The counter involves bracing into the leg kick and then returning it immediately with the inside low kick. Showing this counter just now because it's going to tie into the setups portion later in the video. You can see here that I'm starting in my squared stance, I'm bracing into the kick, returning with the inside low kick, and I land in my bladed stance. This is once again emphasising that standing in your square stance is more preferable, but try and find ways of entering into the bladed stance. See here once again, starting in the square stance, bracing the kick, inside low kick, and then landing in my bladed stance. I think the best way to get good at throwing back kicks is to first get good at throwing side kicks. So we're going to learn to throw the side kick from our opposite stance. So we're going to move into our bladed stance. If you normally stand orthodox, you're going to stand southpaw and vice versa. We're going to learn to throw it from a slightly shorter bladed stance this time. Now the main thing when you're throwing a side kick or a back kick is the position of the heel of the standing leg. You can see here that I'm going to point my heel towards the camera and bring my foot into a shorter bladed stance. The position of the heel is the most important thing when throwing the back kick, because wherever your heel is pointing is where the kick is going to end up going. So once we're in our short bladed stance with the heel pointing towards where we're going to kick, we're going to bring our leg up into this chamber position. The most important thing with the chamber is making sure your heel stays pointing towards where you're going to kick and that your toes are curled towards your shin. The reason we curl the toes towards the shin is so that you strike with the heel and not with the ball of the foot or the toes. Don't worry too much about the exact position of the chamber because it will change slightly when we go back into our longer bladed stance. Once you get comfortable going into the chamber position, we're going to bring our leg up into the chamber position and then just straighten the leg out while keeping the toes curled back. You can see here that the kick is going exactly where my heel is pointing. So bring up into the chamber and then straighten the leg out. If you find it difficult to get height on the kick, you can start off by doing the exact same motion, just starting at a lower height and then gradually working your way up. A good drill for developing your side kick is to start off in the chamber position, bring your foot out to full extension and then return back to the chamber position. You can try and do this as many times as you can without letting your foot touch the ground. Once you're comfortable in this position, we can now move on to speeding up the kick. The first thing to do when throwing the kick at full speed is make sure you're pushing off the ball of your foot. So you're going to come up to the same chamber position with your heel pointing towards the target, and this time pushing off the ball of your foot so that you're landing going forward. This makes sure that your weight is moving forward in the kick and you're going to get more power when you land. Once you're comfortable here, you can start widening your stance slightly and then think the same things in your head. Bringing the leg up as your heel's pointing towards the target and then pushing off the ball of the foot. As you get more comfortable, widen your stance and try and throw the kick at a faster speed. So you can see I'm throwing the kick onto the pad, making sure my heel's pointing towards the target. I'm pushing off the ball of the standing foot and I'm driving my heel into the pad. Making sure we really push off the ball of the foot so you land with your weight going forward and the power goes into the pad and you don't get knocked back the way. Once we know how to throw the side kick properly, we can use this technique to learn how to throw the back kick. So the best way to think of throwing the back kick is as a turning side kick. So everything works the exact same except we're back in our original stance because we're throwing with the rear leg rather than the lead leg. So we're going to turn our heel towards the target, bring our leg up, and we're going to end in this exact same chamber position before that we saw with the side kick. When we're getting into this position, it's important to make sure that you don't turn too far around. So you want to keep your back facing towards the target and you're just going to look out the corner of your eye over your shoulder at where you're going to be kicking. Turn the heel to the target, up into the chamber, and then looking just over my shoulder. When you're throwing the full back kick, everything works the same. When you get into this chamber position, you're looking over the shoulder, extending the leg out as you push off the ball of the standing foot. So you turn the heel to the target, leg into the chamber position, looking over out the corner of your eye, and extending going forward. Once again, most important thing is making sure the heel is pointing to where you're going to kick, because wherever the heel is pointing is where the kick is going to end up going. It's important to note that when you throw the kick at full speed, you're not going to have the same exaggerated chamber with the leg as you do when you're throwing it at a slow speed, but everything else works the exact same. Your heel is going to point towards the target, you're going to look over your shoulder out the corner of your eye, you're going to push off the ball of the standing foot, and then you're going to extend your leg into the kick as it lands. See here, once again, everything works the exact same as it did when you're doing the kick slowly, except your chamber is not going to be quite as exaggerated when you're doing it at a fast pace. We can now look at ways we can set up the back kick during our sparring. It's important to consider when the right time to throw the back kick is. So you want to throw the kick as your opponent is stationary or as they're advancing towards you, and avoid throwing the kick as they're moving away because it can leave you in an overextended and compromised position. So these setups are going to focus on moving from the squared stance into the bladed stance long enough to throw the kick. So the easiest way to do this is to start in your squared stance and then simply shift back into your bladed stance. So you might use this in a scenario where your opponent's advancing towards you. You can shift back into your bladed stance, and then if they continue advancing towards you, you're in the perfect position to throw the back kick as they advance towards you. So I'm in the square stance, shift my feet at the same time into the bladed stance, turn the heel towards the target, and throw the back kick. Another effective setup is off of the rear round kick. As you can see here, I'm throwing the rear round kick onto my opponent's guard, trying to gauge the reaction of them shifting out of the way of the power of the kick. Throwing the kick on the guard, trying to get the reaction of them shifting out of the way of the kick. Once you see this reaction, you can start setting up your back kick. See here, I'm going to throw the round kick onto the guard, and this time I'm going to fake the kick to get the reaction, and all I have to do is turn my heel towards my opponent. I'm in the perfect position to throw the back kick. This setup is really effective because it means you don't have to move your feet at all. Once you get the reaction of your opponent moving out of the way of your round kick, as they move, they put themselves in the exact wrong position to get hit by the back kick. One more time, throwing the kick onto the guard, getting the reaction of them moving out of the way. As you fake the kick this time, you're in the perfect position to land the back kick. The final setup we're going to look at is based off of the bracing leg kick defense that we looked at the start. Just a reminder, as the leg kick comes in, I'm turning my knee and bending my knee into the kick so I take less power onto my thigh. The setup for the back kick is going to come off of the inside low kick counter that we looked at in the stance portion. So I'm going to brace, return with the inside low kick. If your opponent moves out the way of the inside low kick, you're now in the perfect position to land for the back kick. So if you continually return the leg kick with the inside low kick, eventually your opponent might pull the leg out of the way of the kick, and now you will land in your bladed stance, and you can just simply turn your heel towards the target. You're in the perfect position to land the back kick. Once again, squared stance, block the low kick, land the inside low kick. This time, opponent moves out the way, in my bladed stance, can turn the heel towards the target and land the back kick. The last area we're going to look at is how to follow up to a missed back kick. It's very likely that you will miss some of your back kicks in sparring, so it's important to have a follow up to when this happens. The follow up we're going to look at is when you throw the kick, your opponent sees it coming and moves out of the way, and you're going to respond immediately with a side kick as they close the distance on you. So for whatever reason your opponent sees the kick coming, they move out of the way, and you're in the perfect position to immediately throw a side kick as they close the distance again. It's for the follow-up where it's shown to be important that you don't want to turn all the way around and you want to keep your back facing your opponent. You can see here that I land in the perfect position to throw the side kick because I kept my back facing the opponent and I was looking over my shoulder. So I throw the back kick, opponent moves out of the way, I've already got my heel facing the target, and I lift my leg up for the side kick. So that was the breakdown of the back kick. We broke it down into 5 different parts, looked at the stance, how to throw the side kick, then the back kick, looked at some different setups on how to use the back kick in your sparring, and then finally a follow up on what to do if the kick misses. Hope you all learned something from that, guys, and thanks for watching.